The Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City College presents Liberty Mail with the Student Fellows of Faith and Freedom.
Welcome back to Liberty Mail. This is Libby Krieger.
And Aaron Jenks.
And we are coming to you from the underground studio here at Grove City College with the Institute for Faith and Freedom. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a super exciting day here at IFF as we have former Attorney General Bill Barr coming this evening. So we're just really excited to hear from him on the presidency, hear his thoughts. So jumping right into our first conservative win of the week, we have a California issue, actually, which I feel like we don't really have California wins very often just because the nature of California. But San Francisco parents recalled 3 school board members in a special election. So there are 7 Democratic members of the school board. All 7 are Democrats, and 3 were eligible to be recalled, and they were in this special election. So
and that was the president, vice president, treasurer?
I believe so, yes. And it's really interesting because this is, it wasn't even a really bipartisan recall. It was more parents are seeing that instead of opening up classrooms, these school board members are focusing on racial equity issues while pushing the school classroom openings to the side. So I think this is a win because it's showing parents are actually involved in their local elections and caring about their children's education. And it's also just accountability for actions over words. If you care about these kids, you need to get them back in school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see something actually being done on the parents' side because, I mean, even in Florida, or not Florida, sorry, apologies. In Virginia, we saw kind of how important the kind of education was to the voting system and how parents came out and really swinged the election. So now we see in Florida and San Fran, we have them actually getting stuff done and getting these kind of leaders on the board out of the way. And so I know in the article it said that a lot of people even within San Francisco hold conservative values even if they don't kind of register as a Republican. And so I think that's kind of a common theme even in these kind of liberal states coming from New York. I know there's a lot of conservative values, but you err on the side of saying that you are a Republican.
Yeah, I think, well, what's interesting is this movement to recall the supervisor, or the school board members. The Board of Supervisors, President Shaman Walton, slammed the recall and said it was, quote, closet Republicans and most certainly folks with conservative values in San Francisco, even if they weren't registered Republicans. And that's really interesting because that was like such a insult to be called a Republican or a conservative, like, wow, this is just a Republican conservative thing. And the fact that that was the comment she made in the San Francisco Chronicle kind of shows you, if that's an insult, what environment they're living in out there that is so progressive, that just being a Republican is such an insult.
Yeah, and constantly, like, no matter what instance or whatever topic we're talking about, it seems that the progressive side will always throw insults at people that kind of like vary away from them. So, I mean, famous Ronald Reagan quote is, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the party left me." And so we constantly see this like happen in the media is where, okay, you have someone like Andrew Yang or something who's like a middle moderate Democrat, and then he strays away, or this person strays away from the progressive left, and they throw insults at them. They say, "No, you're a white supremacist.
It's like if you're not
bigot.
in step, like completely in step with the narrative, then they're going to throw insults at you. But we're seeing is like the narrative keeps on getting pushed farther and farther to the left, and that's why I think maybe some conservatives out in San Francisco aren't actually what we would call conservative, but compared to the rest of the state, they are.
And one of the biggest, I thought, kind of, quote-unquote progressive legislation within the school district was that they were trying to end merit-based admissions. And so that was a big push for mainly what the article talks about is their Asian population. The school is majority Asian population. And so parents were very upset that the ending merit-based admissions was going to happen. And so that was coming from top up, from the president down. And it says right here, it says there's 560 new Asian American voters that registered all parents, just to get into this and get their voice heard.
Wow, that's great. Just getting more people involved. I know, I think it's interesting that what we're also seeing with this issue is that California is ready to open up to, and they're seeing that this is not an issue that needs to keep kids home, and California is the last place you'd expect that. But I think it's been so long now where kids have been out of school, and they're seeing the repercussions of that mentally and for their educational purposes as well. So I think that's also a great sign that we're seeing. And I'm wondering how much, like you mentioned Virginia before, the local school board issues in Virginia have kind of started more of a nationwide awareness and movement towards actually looking at what your school board's saying, what they're doing, and holding them accountable. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of connection, because I feel like maybe I just wasn't in tune to school board issues as much before, or the media wasn't, but this could be more of like they're seeing it in Virginia, they're getting encouraged by it, and then so they're doing something about it in their state.
Yeah, I hope they are encouraged, and I hope parents or groups of voter blocks are encouraged throughout the country by seeing just, okay, we maybe have a slow domino effect. But I also think it's like, okay, we understand that this kind of thought process is so popular within colleges, and now it's kind of trickling down into public schools. And it's happening across the country. It's not, because I know, like, right before all this happened, I remember even my local school board was having a vote whether to implement, I can't remember specifically what it was called, but almost like
Was it like
a
equity?
racially equity learning or something. It was
Okay.
Was labeled as, actually. And so it's going on around everywhere. I talked to friends from Pennsylvania, and they had the same thing going on. And so as we see is happening around the country, like you said, like hopefully they get motivated to
stand
like,
up for the
they can do
kids
it in California, we can do it here.
Yeah, exactly. And show that you actually do have power to do something. Even if you think, oh, it's just a school board election, like it doesn't really matter that much. These things do matter. Local elections matter. And we're seeing that parents are actually caring. Another interesting thing about how the Board of Supervisors president said this was like a conservative Republican thing. The article talked about how it was like someone dressed up in like a rainbow flag. Like, this is not a conservative per se who's pushing this, but they were like, I'm not a Republican or conservative. I just think kids need to be back in schools, and that's why we're holding them accountable. So I think that's good that you're seeing this be more of a bipartisan push against the school board.
Yeah, like, I mean, we're going to point it out because the article points it out. But like you said, in the photo, if you look up this article, it is a man with a rainbow flag around him, and then you have a black man, and then you have a white woman. They were the three leaders
all
of
like
this
intersectionality
so-called, like,
check boxes.
Yeah, and like they can be Republican,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. But but against like what we say is the media narrative.
And this article is on the New York Post if anyone did want to look that up. Anything else you have to say on this win, or do you want to?
No, I kind of want to hop into our second win, and it starts with currently not so much cemented win, but it is a possible future one that Republicans are trying to unearth the origins of the COVID-19 virus, saying they will launch a full-blown investigation if they take over the House
in 2022.
In 2022. And so they would have full-on subpoena power. They'd be diving into it so they would start in January if this happens. It's really interesting because, it's been 3 years now, and they've definitely done
2 weeks to slow the spread.
Yeah, something like that. They've definitely done investigations into it, and they've uncovered stuff. I know it's kind of wishy-washy, and no one is agreed upon where it's come from. The scientists are kind of like, no one's in agreement on it.
It's hard because this has become what should be just a factual thing of we want to know what happened, has become such a partisan conversation that I feel like it will just take Republicans taking over the House for more action to get done because both sides see it as such a partisan topic now. What this made me think of actually was, so this summer, whenever I was interning at the Media Research Center, we went down into Old Town Alexandria and did some man on the street asking people if they trusted Dr. Fauci. And it was really interesting because at one point, it seems like everyone would agree with wanting to know where the virus came from. And so we got on that topic with a few people that we were talking to, and they expect you to be a little more liberal just because you're in Old Town. They're like, oh, like a camera crew, they're definitely more on the left. But we'd always surprise them when we'd push back against them with more conservative questions. And I had this one couple that was saying they don't care about holding China accountable. They're like, I just think we need to move past this. Doesn't matter who did what. We just need to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I was like, well, if you don't want it to happen again, don't we need to realize what the problem was? And they were like, I honestly don't care if China did it or what happened. So I think, but that was because it's become so partisan that they don't want to cede any willingness to the conservatives, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this is a win, because it's going to be forced to have the truth come out.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I could think about a couple different examples where if there's something like this came up, or just an instance where, okay, do we want to get to the bottom of it? And then some people are like, no, we don't care. We want to focus on other important things. That's fine. But it's never, they never are 100% consistent with this. Mm-hmm. So if we had flip-flop sides, it would be Salem witch trials, trying to get conservatives, like people in control, who's at fault.
Yeah. And
it would be a witch hunt to get their heads. And so, but now it's just, I think it's just so, the hypocrisy of the left is that, no, we don't care anymore.
Well, yeah, you saw with the 2016 election, the left wanted to get to the bottom of the Russia hoax and the Steele dossier and all that. And now that it's come out to be completely fabricated, it's just funny that they don't care about the truth whenever that's what they claim to back then. And I know COVID and the 2016 election they're different things, but at the end of the day, you should carry their way.
The same merit at the base of it. It's like, okay, we're going to hold people in power accountable. Something happened that is definitely what we don't want to happen in our democracy, whether it's a voting fraud or a pandemic. And my brain is just bouncing. The WHO said that the pandemic is no longer a
pandemic, or
they said it was no longer a crisis whatsoever in the United States. So they're going to try to move towards regular
lower
life.
Status. Oh.
Sorry, my brain just jumps like that. ADHD.
Wow, it's been a long time coming. Yeah, they said 2 weeks to slow the spread, and I get things change, but also it's been like you said, 2.5 years now.
Yeah. And I think the main part of kind of going back to like accountability is that, okay, for the most part, I think either, at least I won't even say majority, but there is a subject thought that it comes from China, and this has been a well-developing theory since year one, which kind of got shut down in the beginning. But the whole point is like, okay, if they were responsible for this, we need to hold them responsible. They
need to
caused
be held
a global
account.
pandemic.
Yeah, well, and also I know Rand Paul has been very, very strong on questioning Dr. Fauci, but there is questions as to whether he was completely ethical and if he had committed perjury in front of Congress. I'm not making those claims, but I'm saying those are claims that some people have made about Dr. Fauci, and so there's question as to whether he was completely telling the American people the truth, if he had any part in this gain-of-function research possibility at the Wuhan lab that would have allowed for a virus like this to
his
spread
time
to
with
a
the
pandemic.
NIH and funding towards the Wuhan lab. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, okay, well, we should really know that those facts. Like, how can we not trace those dollars and see exactly how they've been spent, where they've gone, where they traveled?
Because at the end of the day, there's an answer, and we just have to find it.
I agree.
But
so good for, hopefully this happens in the future, is that they get down into the
and I'm
nitty-gritty
hoping this
details.
can be a bipartisan effort at some point too. If we can all agree that we want to find out truth, that would be great. But we'll see. TBD.
There's a lot of political weight on this, so my optimist side is down. I don't think so.
I'm always the pessimist, so you can
I'm a
expect what I
pessimist here right now.
think too. And you found moving to our third one, you found this great Pew Research study. Do you want to kind of just intro that?
Yeah, I love this one. So it's a little old. It's from November, but the headline is "What Makes Life Meaningful?" And they did a survey from 17 advanced economies throughout the world, and it is like 8 pages long of subtopics upon subtopics. But I thought it was wonderful because it really highlighted some interesting truths that I thought surprised myself. Starting off with like the first kind of top priority throughout these 17 countries are 38% said that family and children are the number one source of meaning in their life. And maybe that's not surprising in effect, but it's supportive, and it makes me optimistic about kind of where people are at. It's great news that okay, we see this kind of progressive, and in the face of progressivism and Marxism, where, okay, we might want to abolish the family. We don't really care about family values anymore, or traditional values. But then 38% of the world says, no, this is what gives me meaning in life. So I think they'll protect that in a sense.
Yeah, I guess the place where we have to be discerning about that is, what do they mean when they say family and children? I mean, even a progressive could say they love their family. Like, we have to understand family in the traditional sense. I still think it is a win that this is one of the biggest meanings for people. But kind of, I know this is a further point of yours, but it's a little surprising that so many say family without saying faith. Because I feel like they are connected in some way. To care about family, you have to have an understanding of what family is, and you kind of get that more from faith, in my opinion, at least. Yeah,
I don't know if we'll talk about that at a separate time, because I don't think I understand that completely.
Okay.
Because I can definitely see the two opposites, and just like in my own experience in life, just I know that the two can be very separate in people's lives.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I just see them both connected to tradition, and I guess you can care about family without having the traditional understanding of it. So maybe that's why they're disconnected in this study. But that's...
Well, here, this kind of ties into, I had one point, like, that the study would maybe constantly think about, is that your personal experience in life and kind of how people live their day-to-day life is so contrasted with people's, like, ideological or philosophical experience and, like, what they hold true. Because, like, the ideology or the philosophy says... morals are not like morals are subjective, for an example. But then your personal experience says, no, I kind of have these core values that seem to hold true throughout the whole society, almost. Like, personally in New York, I hold true that this moral value is objective, and, like, the person in Texas thinks the same.
Yeah, I feel like that's more speaks to our creation and the fact that there's, like, innate moral law and human law that we, even if... I mean, that you can even look to, like, theologically, like, general revelation or natural revelation. Like, it's not something that you're necessarily taught, but you can just see it and know it because of the fact that we are created by God and He put that in us.
And to just hit it home, it's the fact that, okay, family and children is so important, and that's the experience. That in whatever relationship, it seems that the family is your number one kind of, like, either supporting in your life, you love your family unconditionally, your parents love you unconditionally, and then, okay, wait, the ideological stances, family's not that important. You need to kind of, like, develop yourself. I'm gonna put me at the center of my world, and you kind of become your own God in a sense.
The radical humanist understanding that has progressed.
It's a humanitarian view, for sure.
Well, and so I see you have a point down here about what the methods are of gaining knowledge. And I think that's interesting how there's experience, respected authority, and reading. And I'm assuming that's what people answered as, like, their top three?
No,
or
so
is that
this is what I've learned in my experience. And I read it probably like 3 years back, and I really enjoyed it, is that there's only 3 ways to gain knowledge in this life. And like you said, experience, which can include science, and, like, kind of reason. And then respected authority is when you hear from someone, and then reading. And aside from that...
So where does, like, the Bible fit in? Is that considered reading or respected authority?
I would put that in all three.
Yeah.
Because when it's a respected authority that you can look at as such. Some people definitely do not. But then when you're reading it, no matter what, you gain truth from it. When you also, like, okay, that fits with my real life experience. Like, I know this to be true. Like, okay, I do love my family, or I see my family as, like, the number one influential in my life.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is I know I've talked about this before in the podcast, but how you can track the thought, like, back to the Enlightenment and how that's changed, and how prior to the Enlightenment, I think a lot of, like, the classical liberal understanding came from that, like John Locke, all that type of thinking, but how that puts so much more emphasis on gaining understanding from reason alone, rather than revelation. And I think, that it's just kind of like a natural progression there, that if reason alone is how we gain understanding, then it's on the human to know everything that we can know, and you just have to basically figure it out. But it's like making man God, like you said, because if we're the only ones who can conceptualize what is real, and we have to have that own like thought process through it.
Yeah, I like thinking about it like this. It's that kind of when you only think that reason is the king of kings in this life and definitely of like truth, you're only looking within the box. And if you subscribe to whatever's in the box in this earth, okay, I only think that X, Y, and Z, or this, I don't believe in the supernatural. Your box is very limited in what can happen, and explaining stuff, you're going to run into trouble. And same with the Christian, you're going to run into trouble. But the Christian understands that, okay, life goes outside this box. And like you said, there is revelation, and that's where God comes into place. And
The
that's
dual
where
nature of
the supernatural takes place.
of gaining understanding from both experience and knowing that we also can't gain everything from experience and looking to revelation of reading the scripture.
And I thought for this whole survey that the second, actually my favorite thing was that they had a religion and faith section. And the numbers are so low, so like I could, like you or anyone could be like, it's not that impressive. But they did a study and who mentioned kind of faith and reason as their, or sorry, not faith and reason, faith and religion as their top or kind of, top 5. And it said 15% of all Americans brought up religion. And so, small number, I guess, but in comparison with the rest of the world.
Yeah, wasn't it the top?
It was, no other country had more than 5% say that that religion or faith was in their top 5
And these
purposes,
are for like
meaning in
developed
life.
countries, correct? They only did it for
It was like
15, 20.
Yeah, the UK, Netherlands,
So your major players.
Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so 15% mention religion or God as a source of meaning, making it the 5th most mentioned topic. And just to see, like, okay, America definitely, we constantly think of ourselves as we're becoming way too either secularist and we're dropping religion. But comparison right now, I think that's a good win for either conservatism, be like, okay, we're not too far gone. Well, at least we still hold a fighting chance.
I mean, I'll put the pessimistic side up. Just because we're better than everyone else doesn't mean that we're by any means good. So, I mean, I guess, yes, we're maybe farther along, more religiously focused than the rest of the developing countries, but maybe we're all too far gone. That's my little take.
Yeah, I thought one...
Not that we actually are too far gone, but I mean, 15% is pretty low.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. One of my critiques for the whole survey was that, okay, they're definitely not talking to Christians in China, as in the number one kind of increasing population of Christians. And then they're definitely not, they didn't do any countries in Africa where Christianity is the most growing faith in the region. And then back to China, it's like 20 million Christians, I think, is the last like survey. I know I was talking to Dr. Kengor about that. But then we see these populations, I don't think they're really getting accounted for in this survey. So it's definitely a skewed survey in the sense that, okay, we have major European countries in the U.S., Canada, and so we see this kind of Western intellectual secularist thought.
Yeah, that's true. Well, also it might be skewed by the fact that some countries can't openly talk about religion quite as much, so maybe it's not as like socially acceptable to answer in that way. So I mean, all we can do is make assumptions from the data, but there's a chance the data's wrong. So.
Yeah, well, I know we're super excited for this event. I'm gonna wrap up if you're okay with that.
Yeah, please wrap us up.
We are happy to have TikTok up and running. So it's no more, hey, look out for TikTok. TikTok is up and running.
It's posted now. Thank you, Aaron.
And we think that will get some more engagement on a broader scale.
What's the handle? Liberty.mail?
Yeah, liberty.mail. One video up. We're going to have a couple videos each week because we have a ton of content, 21 episodes to dive into and kind of dissect.
So I think we're doing little clips from the show.
Yeah,
so
15,
you can
20 seconds.
see that. Let us know if you want us to make some TikTok dances or anything like that you think you would want to see.
Libby volunteered herself. I did not. Libby will be doing that.
We'll get some other fellows to join in with that. But let us know what you want to see from the TikTok and from more episodes. We'll have some special episodes coming up in the future. We'll We'll cue you in on those.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. And
Yeah.
for now, if you can hit this subscribe button.
Hit the bell,
and the bell
too.
right there.
Yeah.
Then we would appreciate that. Thanks,
Yeah,
y'all.
share with your friends. We'll see ya.
For more information on this podcast or other programs, please visit faithandfreedom.com.